Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. I have Jamie here from Always Potential. I've watched him speak at Humans. His story was so good, we thought, well, let's get him on the podcast to inspire and encourage a whole load of people. So welcome.
Hey, thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, so Always Potential. Let's start there. What does that mean?
Do you know what? I remember I went traveling to Africa when I was 21, and something always, we had a guy, the tour guide who we worked with, whenever anything would happen, would just say, it happens. So most of us know the phrase, it happens. Mm-hmm. And I learned it back, 20 years ago or so. And what I figured out is there's always potential and there's always potential for greatness as well. And the name, when it just sort of stuck, it resonated that throughout the bad times of my life and throughout the bad times of other people's lives, that life can equally get better as well. Yeah. But we just have to focus on it. So it's what we focus on that matters.
So the focus aspect is essentially looking at the potential that one has and essentially focus on that and focus on the learnings from when stuff happens, as opposed to dealing with the actual negative aspects of when stuff has happened and stay in that place. So it's like, okay, that's bad. We don't deny it's happened, but we're more focused on what can we learn out of it? Maybe so it doesn't happen again, or maybe if it's not outside of our control, how we actually respond to it. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, it's sort of both. It's learning from past experiences, but equally, nobody knows what's going to happen next week either.
Yeah.
Because life does happen.
Yeah.
We don't know what tragic event is going to happen. We don't know if something is not going to go in our favor. And so I think I'm more of a realist. No one has ever described me as an optimist. I'm more of a realist, I think, and realize that things simply happen in life.
Yeah.
And yes, it's great to learn from past experiences and past events, but it's always okay to acknowledge that life isn't going to go in our favor in the future either. And that's okay too. And so we can still focus on what it is that we want in life, but we also can focus on not being disheartened when things don't go in our favor in life in the future.
So I kind of see it this way, that you have a purpose and you are on a journey, but in order to get there, I think everyone's seen the entrepreneurial sketch where you got the start and the end and it's a straight line, and then you've got the reality where it's up and down and all over
zigzag
the place.
And
and there's sharks, there's this, that and the other. But I think what helps us endure the journey is knowing what journey we're actually on, rather than we're going through all this stuff and we don't know what the outcome looks like. So if we know what we're trying to get towards, we can endure some of that heartache, the pain, the process, or whatever, broken friendships, relationships, loss of money, loss of earning, whatever it may be, if we know that there is a journey that we're going on. And I think for me, for someone who is looking to fulfill their potential, it's not about perfection, which I think we have in our head sometimes.
Definitely.
It's got to be perfect.
Yeah.
And if we're not perfect, no one's going to be interested in us. And there's that saying, isn't it? It's progress, not perfection. And I think for me, that's characterized my life and the journey of people that we've heard on the podcast, and probably yourself as well, is that we're making progress. We're not coming here to say we've got all the answers and we know everything, but we're willing to discuss it and we're willing to share some insights that says, well, if this happens, this is how I got through it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, and I don't even know where it came from. At the start, that almost success matrix, or that success line, that progression. You do well in school, you do well in college, you get into a relationship, you get married, you have kids, you get into a great career, and you live happily ever after. I don't even know who came up with that. But whoever it was, just wasn't honest about life. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And it is definitely about the continuation of the journey and not being set on the outcome itself. Because I know
Yeah.
that my outcomes have changed throughout the course of my experiences and life. I mean, when I was 16, 17, I wanted to be in the Royal Marines. I wanted to be a Royal Marine Commando.
Oh, okay.
And, well, that didn't work out, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and that was because of a tragedy in my life. And I realized that that wasn't a great outcome for me. So I was lost for years. And the only thing you have to do is keep on going and living the journey and putting your one step forward.
Yeah, and I mean, knowing a little bit, and we'll definitely get there to why and how you got there. I just wanted to dwell a little bit more on that how, you know, where is that narrative coming from? That thing of, you know, you go to college, you do well, you do this. I think there's a few things to respond to it. Is that we live in an age where storytelling is quite a big thing, and whether we realize it or not, we are influenced by, you know, the one-eyed monster that sits in our house, which is our television, or the smaller monster, which is our phone. And I think in terms of storytelling, there is a journey that makes us feel good at the end of it.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a formula. So, you know, where I talk about the Hollywood narrative as a journey, because Hollywood use that format, and there's always what they call is an all is lost moment. And it's normally one, maybe two, never any more than that. So that, you know, it could be, if it's a romance, it's like guy meets girl, they start dating, everything's great, and then there's a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And then they split up.
And this time of year is great for it because Christmas 24.
Yeah.
Right. Always on our TV this time of year. It's already started, I think.
Yeah.
Where that storyline is exactly it.
100%.
Boy meets girl, misunderstanding, they get together in the end.
Yeah.
I want to meet them in 5 years' time.
There you go. And that's
they should do a version, you know, a second film to see, well, how was the last 5 years?
And that's it. And I think there is that aspect of, once they get through that, they ride off into the sunset with the end, and they're on a horse, or, you know, they've got married on the day, and there's no what happens afterwards. And I think for me, that sets us up, you know, that, you know, I'm married, I've been married 22 years, make sure I get it right.
Congratulations. Yeah.
But you know, it's not always easy, especially when we first got married. It was two cultures coming together and then into one culture. So Claire come from a very, I would say, more of a quiet background, and they discuss a lot around the table, but they debate. Whereas our house were like, I guess, all around media. So we were either playing games, watching TV, and it was funny when we first met, the contrast. I'm coming along, and the noise you can hear is the cutting of the stuff on the plates, you know. Whereas in our house, there's a dog barking, and I'm having a conversation like I'm talking to you. Claire sat next to me with all this going on, and she's like, "What? This is just too noisy. I don't know if I can cope with this." I think somehow we've kind of made a bit of a hybrid, like in terms of our life. But those two cultures come together, so you got to work at it. You know, you got to deal with those things. And I'd say, you know, we were fortunate in our first year of marriage that we had marriage counselling. You know, we had someone that come in and kind of advised us and said, look, this is what's happening, or whatever else. And we got to understand each other, you know. And I think ours very much was like that whirlwind romance within 9 months from meeting or whatever. And then the reality happened, and then, like, I'd like to squeeze my toothpaste from the bottom, and Claire would just grab it in the middle. You know, all those little things, but it's amazing how they can irritate you or upset you or whatever. But you're right, it's like that story.
I tell you that communication is ongoing.
Yeah.
It was only a couple of months ago. Me and my partner, Laura, we've been together for 8.5 years, and we're getting married next year.
Okay.
And I've only recently told her that when she leaves the tea bag, a teaspoon, and it makes the teaspoon brown, and then you have to scrub off that excess tea stain from wine. And that took about 8 years to say.
It's amazing,
it's
those
amazing.
little ones.
Yeah.
My one, and I'm going to tell everybody, is making sandwiches without using the plate. Claire hates it.
Yeah.
Absolutely hates it. Claire will be able to tell you hers. I'm sure she's got loads, but
if Laura was here as well, I'd be the same thing.
The reality is that we're on this journey that we recognise, certainly in relationships and storytelling, where we perfection, we have this narrative, and then we're in the real. I think that's in business and in life. In life, the Instagram, the LinkedIn is like, everything's got to be perfect, and then and there's no, how do I put it? There's no vulnerability, or then if there is vulnerability shown, it's almost an overshare. So you want people to feel sorry for you, as in it's like victim mentality. And I think it's about being healthily open and transparent in terms of the lines that you're actually on, and communicate authentically, then can encourage other people, because it's I closed the deal yesterday, today, the next day. It's not like that. But you look at some people, it's like, oh my gosh, why are you not flying a jet?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
on the other one, it's like, oh my gosh, maybe you should go and do something else because you look so sad or depressed or upset. So I think for me, it's about being authentic and telling those stories that actually help other people to go, it's not just me then. Because I think that's what I found through networking, is that I met other people going through the same sorts of things as that I do, particularly with the humans crowd as well, where it's like, oh, it's not easy, or we've had to make changes, or, you know, we missed out on that deal, and you can actually talk about it, you know, rather than say that, oh, if I was listening to you only, every conversation you have, you seem to cut a deal, and it's like, no, that's not the case. So I think for me, that narrative or that journey of progress, not perfection, puts us in a good place. And as you said, stuff will happen. You know, stuff will happen, and as a result of that, is that how you deal with it. So just tell us a little bit about your background, because obviously the stuff that happened was quite a big event, and it did shape the way you do life now. There's no question on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've all got things in our life that's happened, that's motivated us, or created forms of discipline to change our journey in different ways, or created a purpose, which obviously is something you like to talk about. For me, I didn't even know at the time. So when I was 17, my brother died in a car crash. I had a phone call from my older brother. So I was 17, Kevin, my brother who died, was 18, and my older brother was 3 years older than me. So what does that make him? About 20 at the time, I guess, 2021 at the time. So I had the phone call from him, and I remember that he phoned my mum first, because I lived with my mum and my two brothers lived with my dad. And he phoned my mum, and I didn't answer the phone because I think it was the mobile that went. And I didn't answer it. I wouldn't. She was in the shower. And then the house phone went, and I thought, oh, it must be important. So I'll get up, and slouching in my room or doing whatever. In my room at 17, got up, answered the phone, and it was my brother, and he just said, I've got something to tell you, and Kevin died. And it is funny because it was such a long time ago. I mean, I'm 39 now, so like 22 years ago.
Wow.
And you remember, your brain remembers incredibly emotive things that happened in your life, which is why I love the term emotional intelligence and studying emotions. And so I remember me telling him, are you joking? And he said, well, it'd be a pretty sick joke if it was.
Wow.
So anyway, my mum came out the shower, and she came to her in the room, and I went in, and I told her that Kevin had died. And I remember destroying her world. She just collapsed on the floor, and I had to pick her up and sit her on the bed. And it was horrific, as any situation would be. And people pass all the time, so we all have these things and actually, don't we all have grief and loss in common at every stage in our life. But that's not the part that surprised me, actually, because I had a really bad time, understandably, like most people did. I was very incredibly supported by my family. I remember being sat on the stairs of my dad's house about a few days, a week later, and my aunt Heather was a very supportive person in my life, still is, and she sat down on the stairs with me, and she said, I'm here if you want to talk. And I remember at the time that I couldn't talk. I did not talk to anybody about how I was feeling. I didn't know why at the time. Just think I didn't want to. And fast forward about fast forward, 15 years, so 5 years ago, I was doing some self-awareness work on myself. I had separated from my marriage, my first marriage, and doing a lot of research into how our minds work. I'm really interested in neuroscience, and bizarrely, and it's really cheesy, right? So I was working up in Paris near Brecon at the time, and I was staying up there during the week, and I went running, and all of a sudden something just came to me, almost like an insight, light bulb moment, that I wasn't a bad person.
Wow.
And it came to me almost like a dominoes effect, just something fell away from my life. And I had thought that I was a bad person for about 15 years because I had destroyed my mum's world with my words. And when I realized that that was just the story that I was creating, and you talk about stories all the time, 100%. And how powerful stories are, and stories can be incredibly powerful on a positive side, but stories can be really powerful on that negative side as well, that almost keeps us down. And I didn't even realize that I'd held on to this deep-rooted belief, and that I lived my life from that belief.
You talked about you were married before, obviously. Do you think that affected it as well?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I had my issues. My wife had her issues. I wouldn't be great at communicating. Many reasons. I think we could go on to the whole gender role, masculine. Why don't men talk? That's a whole another story. But equally,
but the inherent belief is
the same.
The inherent belief is there that you are a bad person.
Yeah. And so if I had talked and being really honest, especially honest in a calm way, which we all should be, then I would risk hurting her and hurting her emotions, and perhaps I would take ownership.
Got you.
Of those feelings and those ownership and own whatever experiences she was feeling. And usually, I guess what tended to happen is I would be honest in, when my lid blew, I guess, when I couldn't contain, which turned into arguments, which we know isn't the best way to communicate at all. No. So there were probably times within our relationship that I did actually hurt her because I wasn't so calm and collected in expressing my emotions and my thinking. In a calm and calm. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I just like obviously knowing you, but I obviously don't know you from way back then. Do you think you've changed in that sense, that the way that you are now, you are more measured? Do you think that your communication is? It's almost like slower. I'm not saying I can see the cogs going around, but I noticed that now you've said what you said. I noticed that you communicate, and I can tell you're chewing it over before you respond.
Yeah.
Is that something new, or is that the way you've always been?
I think I've always been quite calm.
Yeah.
I've been brought up to be quite kind and compassionate generally.
Yeah.
I respect my parents for that, especially on my mum's side and my mum. But the more self-awareness work that I've done on myself and figuring out where do my beliefs stem from, why do I find the way that I do now, provides a calmness within me, knowing that I'm the one always creating my own experience.
Yeah.
And so it's more that I can take responsibility for the emotions that I create myself.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with maturity and time, but equally I think it also comes from self-work.
Yeah, well. And I think the healthy thing that you've talked about here is that despite all those things, and obviously that run where the penny drops, so you've already invested in yourself, you're already trying to process it, and eventually the penny drops and you're like, okay, I'm not a bad person. from that moment of running, then what happens? Do you then go, well, if I'm like this, how many other people have got to that point?
Yeah, exactly it. And the more I speak to people about their beliefs and where they think or they believe their beliefs come from, it's amazing what affects people. I mean, I've spoken to potential budding artists that haven't become artists because their teacher had told them that their horse that they drew at the age of 9 was rubbish. And it does mean a couple of things. Number one, we do have to be careful what we say as adults.
Yep.
But number two, no matter how careful you are, we all absorb something. We all make meaning out of something.
Yeah.
Because our brains are meaning-making machines.
Yeah.
And there could be a time in your life that maybe every adult around you was incredibly cautious about what they said, but something happened and it created some form of meaning and belief that drove your behavior in some way, shape or form.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think it's a lot about having the right sort of people around you. And I look back now, certainly in sport, because I love sport. I run football teams, I played football, whatever. That was a big part of my life. But when I reflect back, the school that I was at, certainly the PE teachers, particularly the main guy, they were more rugby. And in my head, it was like, I want to play football. I'm going to play football. And they were trying to encourage me to play rugby. I'm like, yeah, but it's not a game that I grew up with. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I'm used to football. I know the teams. I support it, but I don't watch rugby. And this is a bit of a strange game when everyone's getting covered in mud. I always remember the first time we ever had a rugby session. You never get away with it now. He lined us all up in a long line, and there were puddles all behind us. And he went down and squeezed our ankles, and then we fall over naturally into the puddles. And he said, "You don't bat us a bat. You just need to tackle them the right way." And I remember that one poor kid was crying his eyes out as he was going, oh, and it led down. Obviously, then all the others are all laughing or whatever else. I was thinking, you wouldn't get away with it now. But I remember thinking, oh, well, I'm a better footballer. You're just trying to stop me. You're just trying to stop me, maybe even making it in football. But now I look back, and again, I don't know why I got to that point, but when I look back, I was probably a better rugby player. And what was different about me is that at the time, I would go, well, why don't you kick the ball between the posts? Because we get points. So if it's about winning, surely, rather than keep trying to score a try, which is always difficult, if you get close enough, get the ball between the posts. And when I used to play, I'd do those sorts of things. It was always a bit unconventional. And I think that's maybe why they wanted me to play rugby. And no matter how hard they pushed, I resisted. Now I look back, I'm like, I should have pursued it because it was a better route to go. And for whatever belief, whether it was I don't want to be told what to do or I wanted to be the master of my own destiny. But I think back then, they obviously could see the potential in you, and maybe that wasn't always clear. Yeah. And I know that they didn't like football. So my thing was, you don't like football, that's what it is. Because we'd rarely play. When we played it, it was like, it's a treat, But actually, when I look back now, I look more like a rugby player now. but there are beliefs that if you have got the wrong people around you or you've got the wrong beliefs, you might make decisions where you could have been better at something than you could. And I think that's what I've learned is that let more people in. Does that make sense? Rather than just being the island and making your choices yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But even sticking on the sports theme, I'm not a sporty person. I don't support sports at all. Yeah. But my older brother Barry, he did from an early childhood, and I think it is the people who you have around you. He had other sporty friends who liked sports. My friends didn't like sports, so I didn't get into it. It wasn't very good. And then I remember when I was younger, and he played a lot of football and supported Liverpool. Now, we were brought up in Crymych in Pembrokeshire, a rural area, West Wales, and it never made sense to me the way someone would support a team they've never met, hundreds of miles away, probably never see. I mean, he still supports Liverpool and probably seen them a lot of times now. But even back then, it wasn't logical to me to have a belief system that I should support a team that I have no idea who they are. But, football is great to many, many people. So,
well,
those are the beliefs.
Yeah, so I support Liverpool.
Yeah.
But the reason why I did, because I watched television and there was this guy doing spaghetti legs in what was a penalty shootout. And I didn't know what it was. I just thought the guy was funny. And then they won. But I didn't know the significance of the game until maybe a bit later on. And when I really got into football. But I kind of followed the goalkeeper more than anything else.
Okay.
His name was Bruce Grobbelaar. And it was like, I followed that team because of that incident being, and then I lived at the time, I was living in Bristol, just outside Bristol. And that question, well, why don't you support one of the Bristol teams? But I always felt that because I originally come from Essex, I was like, well, I can't, it's always Rovers or it's always City. And I plumped for Swindon at the time because it was just like, well, this halfway between where I used to live or whatever. And they were actually quite good. They had Glenn Hoddle, who's a manager. So the people listening, they probably remember the era. But for me, because there was that emotional connection with the goalkeeper, that's why I've always supported Liverpool and followed them and went and watched them. And I've obviously seen Liverpool quite a few times now, quite a lot to be honest. but there's that of watching the football and that thing, oh, what, that goalkeeper's a bit unconventional. I think maybe that's what resonated with me is the unconventional way, or the unconventional way of doing things. And all he was doing was waggling his legs, they called it spaghetti legs, to pot the guy taking the kick. Okay. Because he was wobbling like this, he skied it and they won the cup because of it. And then many years later, I think Liverpool ended up in another cup final, and the same thing happened again. The goalkeeper copied what he had did, and they obviously won. And it was just, I think it's that unconventional route that attracted me. And maybe the rugby seemed like the more sensible route because we're a rugby school, and maybe it's the unconventional route that attracted me because not many people did football out of our school anyway. And looking back, maybe there are some times where it is worth going down the conventional route.
But I guess that we're not logical beings.
No.
And maybe had you been a logical being, maybe you would have seen, well, actually, maybe I should go into rugby.
Yeah.
But we're not. We're emotional beings in general.
Yeah.
Which is why figuring out who we are, how we function, how emotions work is so important. Because taking myself back to that time where I had that insight of, I wasn't a bad person, I then almost came to the realization that, okay, I'm not a bad person. I'm just going to hold this scar for life. And that's okay. But then I came to the realization that holding the scar is equally a story.
Yeah.
And I didn't even need to hold that. So we continue to make stories based on our emotions rather than almost what's logical.
Yeah, I think what I've learned is that certainly in my journey, and you probably get this when you're coaching people, that always potential is that there are patterns and there are principles. And I think I've naturally seen those. I don't know whether that's just because a couple whatever, but just finding out, show me the formula. Now it's not like more than show the formula, I'd find the formula. Does that make sense? Show other people. That's more exciting. If someone just gives me the formula, oh, someone's already discovered it. I'd rather find the unconventional route and then turn it into something that people could actually use. And I guess with your mindset work and that sort of stuff, there are certain principles, I guess, in terms of the way that we wait and the way that we think that you can help people with to deal with the emotions and put them in some kind of order. Would be fair? Yeah.
So some of the principles that we have known to be true aren't true. And I think, and this is where we're at within society anymore. Let's take the phrase, we lack confidence or lack self-esteem.
Yeah.
Well, if we lack something, then where do we get it from? Which is part of the issue within the language that we have incorporated within mainly the westernized society and within schools and school children will say, I lack confidence. And then you're thinking, well, bugger, if you lack confidence, the only place you're going to attempt to try and find that confidence is outside of you.
Yeah.
Which is part of the issue that we've got at the moment, is people are constantly on a search. And it's almost that story of, you take a gap year from college and you go hiking to Tibet and you climb the highest mountain in Tibet. I've got no idea if they have mountains, but they probably do. And there's a wise monk on the top.
Yeah.
And you've spent 6 months trekking and trailing through the wilderness of Tibet, and you get to the top and you say, where's my confidence? And he goes, look within. And our language that we're teaching people within society simply isn't helping at all. And I remember working with this young person quite a few years ago, and I asked him, what do you think your issues are? And he told me he lacks confidence. Where did you even get that term from? Well, everybody else is telling me I lack confidence. Fine. So is there a place or a space in life, a time that you think that you have confidence? And he's 12. And he told me, when I'm on the football pitch, and he plays football with his mates on a Saturday afternoon. And I said, okay, so where did you get the confidence before you get to the football pitch? You stop off in supermarket, Asda. He said, no, he stops off in Tesco's. And picks them up on the way to onto the pitch. And after a bit of a joke, he realised that actually it was within him already. The only difference is he was in the zone. He was simply playing football.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't thinking about all the insecure thoughts that he was having because he was focusing on football. Yeah. Which is a great thing for football, obviously.
Yeah, but
and other sports. But
yeah, and I think that when I reflect back when I did play football, whatever, the best managers that I played with were the ones that tapped into that. Tapped into the fact that, I don't know, spoke to you the right way or teased it out of you and said, don't worry about it. If you put a cross in and people can't reach it, just do another one.
Yeah.
So it removed the sort of the fear of failure potentially.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I remember towards the end of me playing, I was taking corners with my left foot and my right foot or whatever, and I knew when I was confident I could do it.
Yeah.
And when I played for managers, it didn't quite with me. I would just take corners with the right foot because that's my natural foot. So it's quite interesting, just the belief of someone in you as a person as well. Even like when you're talking to them, you're giving them belief to believe something different.
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to me is that you can will yourself and believe and whatever else, but it does help when someone can believe in you or point you towards saying, hey, you can do it. You've got the skills. Look, you're doing it here. So why don't you just try it over here?
Well, absolutely. And that is really important. And there is an attribution where you attribute your own well-being to somebody else or to something else. And that it's not that it's untrue. It's that in itself is a belief that can be really helpful when you've got people around to believe in you. But what happens if you're on your own and you don't have people that believe in you?
Yeah.
And if you continue to believe that your sense of well-being and your sense of purpose and your motivation comes from outside of you, then you're a bit stuck. Which is where a lot of people are.
I agree. I think it's more for me. It's more. I wasn't for permission. It's like I'm getting out the boat. I'm ready to stay on the water, and they're like, go on. It's just that little nod that says, go on, you can do it type thing.
Yeah.
And I think as I got older and as I got more confident, then it wasn't so important as I got older. Because I think certainly as a player, you transition from wanting to be the superstar to actually helping others. And it's not all about you.
Yeah.
So like, for instance, the biggest shift for me was when I actually managed the team, but I played at the same time. And all of a sudden, I'm not there for me. I'm there to help them. And my skills then were, how do I help them be better in what they do? And then, the manager is only going to get moaned at because so-and-so isn't playing this week. It's a very different dynamic, but it was like less about me as a player. And if I had a good game, it was great, but it wasn't the thing. It wasn't why I wasn't playing.
It's about everybody else.
Everybody else. And then I learned in management that who motivates the manager, because everyone. And then I began to realize all the stuff was on the mind of my managers growing up, and thinking, yeah, they're trying to help everybody else, and maybe I'm not the most important person. And even the most skillful players wouldn't always get the most attention. You're trying to manage the team, the referees out, making sure the kit's in play, all the other things that you don't think about, and it's all about you. Then I realised, it has to be that internal motivation that gets you going. That you say, that what do you do when the manager doesn't speak to you? What do you do if the manager, sometimes it's not about you. So, well, he's had a bad day the night before, or whatever else, And I think as I got older, I began to learn that. But certainly when I was younger, I didn't. And I think maybe that's something to do with the school, in the school system or whatever. I mean, there was that aspect of it's one size fits all. We haven't got room to go any deeper, and then just get on with it.
Obviously there's a whole conversation about the school system, but equally a perpetuating message within society as well on the whole. And it starts off really young. And I think I mentioned this in the humans talk, actually, about our sense of well-being being attributed to other people. And of course, yes, you can have good friends, good family, and you can have a good time with. But it starts off really, really young. And I give the example of my daughter, who's now 17, and her taggy. And for anybody who doesn't know what a taggy is, it's a soft toy, like a square piece of fleece blanket with tags coming off it. And my daughter had her taggy since she was a baby, and she still got it. But what she now knows is it's not the same taggy, because she lost it. She dropped it at one stage out of a pushchair. So we bought another one because we thought she'd be devastated if she knew she lost it. So this is actually Taggy 2.0. And she's still got it now. And I told her a couple of years back, and she told me actually, because we talked about how her sense of well-being as a toddler was her well-being as a toddler was attributed to this taggy. And she said to me, if I was in pain, then I would cuddle my taggy and the pain would go away. Or if I was really upset, I'd cuddle the teddy bear or the taggy, and I'd feel so much better and I'd feel happier. And I'm like, but do you know that taggy has no feelings whatsoever? Like, you made all your feel good feelings within you, because that's how the body works. It's a bit like Sonic, right? On the Mega Sega Drive. The whole purpose of Sonic is to go and get those golden rings. And that's what society has become. As long as we get those golden rings, we feel good.
It's like we gamified life, isn't it?
We've gamified life. And our language has supported the gamification of life. And if we can get the message out on a one-to-one but a global scale, and there are people doing this, by the way, that actually our well-being is created from within us, and definitely external forces have an impact. The things that people say to us, family homes that some children are brought into, office cultures and workplaces, some not great, and a detriment to people's well-beings. But ultimately, if we know that well-being is within us, and there are things that we can do to put boundaries in place to protect that, then we make better decisions. It's
an interesting one, because it's like there's quite close parallel between that and purpose. Because it's like you've got it, and you've got to guard yourself to make sure that you execute and deliver it. So the outside circumstances could take you further towards it or further away from it, but it's there in the beginning. Does that make sense? And it's like you're saying, you got this perpetual state of happiness or the well-being. It's there, but circumstances can dictate. I've heard people say, like, your Monday morning is determined by you in the first couple of hours of you being awake. You've decided it's going to be a good day or a bad day. And if you wake up and go, today's going to suck, invariably, it often does. And so it's like a self-perpetuating prophecy over your life. You keep speaking it, the more it manifests itself as being like the worst day ever. And I think for me, I like the aspect of it's already there, and he's learning how to manage those outside circumstances and situations to stay on track. You know, and as you said, like courage, all those things are there.
And you know, funny you say that, because I think that my purpose to support people has always been there since childhood. Because I remember Ian Botham running around the UK in support for, I think it was for leukemia.
Yeah, that's it. He did walks, didn't he?
That's it, yeah. And he came to Cardigan. I lived in Cardigan at the time, and I was 10, 11 years old. And he had this newspaper, and I think it's called the Magic 7.
Okay.
So basically where you'd get sponsorship from 7 people, and you'd just send in more money, I guess.
Yeah.
And I photocopied it. I managed to get someone to photocopy it. And I went around Cardigan, and my grandpa owned a pub, the Saddlers at the time. And so I would photocopy it and collect loads of money.
Wow.
And I was only 10, 11, but I got about £111, which is big for me, because most people were just given 20p.
Yeah.
So even back then, my purpose was always to help and support people and somehow make the world a better place. And that's how I've progressed, apart from wanting to be in the Royal Marines, which I don't really know quite where it came from, but obviously
maybe that's helping people on a much bigger scale.
Maybe, yeah. That changed.
And a bit more pressure on that score.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think it's like you're born with purpose, so it's up to us to find it, and then I think it's a case of, once you've found it, is finding the best outward working of it. You know, and I think I always say this thing is that sometimes purpose isn't. Let's say your thing is to, I don't know, be let's say an amazing coach. Let's say that's the thing. You want to coach people. There's 2 ways that can happen. You can set up your own coaching business, or you can work as part of a team.
Yeah.
And I think for me, neither's right. And I mean, that's the thing I've learned in the journey, that, you know, you can facilitate purpose. You didn't always have to build the framework for that. You know, and I go back in football. I know you're not into it, but Jurgen Klopp, for example, works for someone else. He's not going to build his own football club from scratch. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. He knows that just by doing that job, he's doing his purpose. He's not having to build all the infrastructure behind it, which is a completely different role in this sense. And I think some people, when they're trying to build that thing, it's not necessarily the right vehicle for them to be totally fulfilled in their purpose, fulfilling their potential, because they try to build it rather than actually be part of it. And I think for me, it's how do you get the most impact out of your skills, talents, and abilities? Yeah. So first discover it, and then find out how you can. And listen, learn, have a learning process. Work with other people, and then when you're ready, then maybe go and start on your own. Yeah. I think too many people discover their purpose, and then it's like, right, let's go and do it.
Yeah, without necessarily the skills.
No.
And there's definitely confusion between confidence and skills.
100%.
So a lot of people think that they lack confidence. Well, all they really mean is maybe they're scared to fail, potentially. Yeah. Or that actually they just haven't learned or acquired the right skill set. And you mentioned in terms of there's no one right way of doing it. Well, I'm working on a project at the moment, so you're hearing it here first, called 10.
Okay.
It's based on scaling questions, which coaches should love scaling questions, right? So if 10 was, let's say your happy, purposeful life, 0 was you're not living your life. But there's loads of ways to get to 10. Not 1 plus 9, 8 plus 2, 5 times 5, 2. Loads of ways to get to 10, and there's no right or one way, because what works for working isn't going to work for another. The 10 itself has to be your subjective experience of what is 10 for you, because we all measure success very differently. Mm-hmm. Success to some could be, owning a multi-billion pound company, and others are just, or not just, but putting food on the table for the family and having a holiday twice a year.
Exactly. I think life is more like a compass than essentially a roadmap. Yeah. And the destination is inherently linked with what you started with. You're born with this purpose, and it's got the coordinates which is for you, not for everybody else, but it is for you. And it's up to you to work that out, go on that journey. Yeah. And I think it's interesting, there are many ways to get there in terms of the numbers, because absolutely. And I think in that journey, your score's going to be like this as well.
Yeah.
So like, just because you're a 2 for that month could mean you're a 6 the next month, or an 8 for the month after, because that's in the nature of the journey that we're all on. Yeah. So Jamie, I loved our conversation. Where can people get in touch with you? Because obviously, you're a coach, you help people, you're trying to help them realize their potential and start looking within rather than externally. Yeah. So how would they get in touch?
So 2 ways in the main, probably my website, alwayspotential.com, or LinkedIn. Look me up. Yeah. James Phillips, Always Potential on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed our conversation. It's been great. And we're definitely going to get you back on the sofa. So thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you. Cheers. Good to be here.
Everybody, thank you for listening to the Purpose People podcast. You can obviously see us on YouTube, where you can see our wonderful setting here that we film every time we do a podcast. But you can also listen to us just in your ears on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and Google. Please like and subscribe to YouTube, and please leave a review on our podcast. It really helps us get the message out that can help people live a life on purpose, for purpose. We want to help you make purpose a priority.